Thank you.
We are live.
It is January 21st, and this is a meeting of the Council Rock School District Board of School Directors Policy Committee, and we have 3 board members.
Is now in the conference.
I stand corrected. We have 4 board members participated. Mike Thorwart, Marianne McKee, Kristen Marcel, and I am participating as chair, Ed Tate. And we have 4 members of the administrative team with us. Dr. Robert Fraser, Dr. Sue Elliott, Christine Taylor, and Matt Fredrickson. So we'll call this meeting to order and begin with the first policy on our list, which Dr. Elliott brings to us, 918, Title I, Parent and Family Engagement. Dr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. So the policy 918 for Title I, Parent and Family Engagement is a policy that, as per federal regulations for Title I services and funds that we receive, we are required to have, and we are also required to periodically update it, make sure that it is in line with federal regulations. Part of that requires us to get feedback from our Title I families on any recommended changes to the policy. We did that in the fall, in October, when we have our annual Title I meeting for parents. At that meeting, we give parents an opportunity to look at the policy and offer any suggested changes. So we accomplished that task in October, and this policy that you have tonight in front of you represents the feedback from those parents, as well as it aligns to all of the federal regulations that with Title I that we're required to do for parent and family engagement. So I do not have any recommended changes to the policy as it is written.
Would you remind us very briefly what Title I entails?
Certainly. Title I is a federal program through the originally the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, now the ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, and Title I funds are awarded to districts to support academic needs for students. In our district, we target literacy with our Title I funds, primarily the primary grades, 1st and 2nd grade are our 2 primary targets. We also service some kindergartners and some 3rd graders with using Title I funds as well.
Terrific, thank you. Dr. Fraser, anyone on the phone have questions or comments?
I'm good.
I noticed that the policy requires a lot of disclosure and communication. So
Yes.
transparency is part of this policy. If there are no questions or comments, then the committee will move this policy forward for the full board's consideration. Thank you, Dr. Elliott.
Thank you.
Next on the list, we have a PASL, a whole bunch of human resources related policies. They're not just related, they are human resources policies. And Christine Taylor is going to walk us through them, starting with number 330, which is overtime.
Okay, so when we look at the overtime policy, you'll see that I did make a number of changes to this policy. I did a lot of research to see what other districts had, and this particular policy, I used the Central Lux's model quite a bit. And the reason why I'd like to have more detail in this policy is we are in the midst right now of rolling out our new timekeeping system, Time Clock Plus, which will move us into compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. So we are in the pilot program, and the goal is to continue a group-by-group rollout that will have us fully online with our new timekeeping system at the start of next school year. So as we endeavor to do this, one of the main questions that come up from our support staff who will be impacted by the timekeeping system is why? Why do we need to have a system? Why do we need to record our hours? And I think by having a policy that spells things out very clearly, it will help us in that rollout, help to explain the Fair Labor Standards Act, explain that this is not us individualizing and creating a system for them out of anything other than necessity. So when you look through the policy, you'll see things that are very simple, defining what the Fair Labor Standards Act is, what overtime is, in accordance with that. And then there are some basic things that will help us with our rollout of the timekeeping system. Basic things regarding keeping record of your time in and your time out, supervisory approval of your time in and time out. The necessity to have all overtime pre-approved is in the current collective bargaining agreement, but it's good to reiterate that here. That was also in the existing policy. Talking about maintaining the records, that's right from the Fair Labor Standards Act that we must maintain records. Again, I think that helps us with our rollout, helps in explaining why this system is so necessary to us. And also talks about the falsification of time records, which will become a new worry for us because as of right now, we don't have an opportunity for anyone to do that. So what you see is our take on what exists in other school districts, and I think it's a sound policy that will serve us well and also help us in our endeavor with our new system.
This is reviewed by legal counsel.
No, but I could have it reviewed. I've been working very closely with Rob through the process of implementation of Time Clock Plus, and he actually, what I did was prepared my understanding of the Fair Labor Standards Act for his review because I'm so deeply involved, and he has given me his stamp of approval on my understanding. But I couldn't modify it.
Like that as well, Ed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're working closely with him, and so his review should be pretty simple.
I just have a quick question. Did I hear you say that prior authorization, the written prior authorization that already
It
exists?
does, yes.
And I was sort of intrigued when you said that there's language in here about falsification of records, but employees currently don't have the opportunity to do that? You mean they don't have access to their own records?
I mean, they could falsify a timesheet, but they don't have opportunity right now to clock someone else in, buddy punch, those types of things that will become a new reality for us. You could write down hours that you didn't work on the manual sheet that we use, but this new system will have other opportunities for falsification. So you're right, Ed. There is opportunity now. I know you like.
There's always opportunity.
Yeah,
but yeah, I get it. There's greater opportunity with this new system.
A little bit more.
Yeah. The new system entails the use of employee swipe cards.
There is a component that will have a swipe card. There are also kiosks that will use a 4-digit code.
Oh, okay.
At our larger locations, we'll have the swipe because we have more individuals, but at the smaller locations, because they're less costly, they'll use the 4-digit code.
Yeah. Any other questions on this policy? 3:30 overtime, we will forward to the full board for its consideration. 300. Wait a minute.
Hey, if I could interject just real quickly.
Please.
I just wanted to say a quick public thank you to Christine Taylor, Christine, for leading this work around the timekeeping system. I think the public should know and the board should know that Christine has been at the forefront of this work for many, many, many months. Ian has done an outstanding job working very closely with the association leadership from Crespa, working very closely with Gail Chloe, our assistant business manager. And this process, I'll say so far so good. and that is all credit, really, to Christine.
Great, thank you, Dr. Fraser.
Thank you.
And it, of course, is good that you're working closely with Questa.
Been going very well. We meet with them on a bi-weekly basis to, for implementation. Initially, there was a lot of apprehension, but our meetings have become so productive, really collaborative. We'll continue to meet with them bi-weekly without an ending, because we'll need to keep doing that as it continues to roll out. There'll be nuances that have to be worked through, but they've been wonderful. They really have.
Good, good. Okay, we'll move forward with 330. So 331 is next, job-related expenses.
So for 331, I made a minor change that you'll see in red that claims that we will follow this policy in accordance with our administrative regulations. There were existing administrative regulations, so I have updated those as well for your consideration tonight.
I did include a copy of that in your packet.
Oh, smart, thanks, man.
And Christine, she sent it to me.
So when you take a look at the administrative regulation, this walks through what's reimbursable when you travel for work. And the main change here that I would like to call your attention to from the existing administrative regulation are the reimbursement amounts that have gone up slightly from the existing version. I also added some language that was not present before, some obvious language regarding taking the most efficient and economical route or lodging when it's available. I added some language too that if a meal is included at the conference, then you would participate in that meal rather than submit. My understanding is we don't have a great number of expenses in this area, but since we were updating the policy, it behooved us to update the regulations as well.
Great, and I see the reimbursables follow the guidelines set by the Pennsylvania GSA,
Yes.
and they're not extravagant. $13, $14, $20. Maximums, okay. No alcohol beverages, so forth and so on. Great. Anyone has questions or comments? If not, we'll move 331 forward to the board for its consideration. 332 is working periods.
Working periods, I had one slight change under delegation of responsibility. I have the superintendent or designee may develop administrative regulations. Other work schedules and such are largely defined by the collective bargaining agreements and contracts. So I don't know that we need administrative regulations. We can develop them. We don't have them presently, so I thought change the shall to may, and otherwise this looks fine.
Anyone? I personally think that developing administrative regulations on schedules is a good thing to avoid if possible.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk to this stuff.
Treat people like professionals. Okay, working periods 332 will be forwarded to the full board for its consideration with our recommendation. 333, professional development.
This is a policy that also requires very few changes. The change that I made is under guidelines where our record of credits and attainment of credits come through the HR office, so I made that slight change in the third paragraph.
And we had considerable discussion about new criteria for approving continuing ed credits.
And when we bargained the CREA agreement, we were able to obtain all of those changes. So those changes are in practice now, and we have seen a dramatic change. And course submissions are from universities, they're from reputable programs. So the change has been good, and the effects were immediate.
Good. So those criteria are specified in the collective bargaining agreement, not policy and not administrative regs.
They are stated in the collective bargaining agreement, and you're going to see a reiteration of them when we get to the compensating leave policy.
Great, thank you. Anybody have questions?
And this connection keeps on breaking up on me, so I can't hear everything that's being said. Christine may have mentioned it, but part of that collective bargaining agreement was to actually list the colleges and universities that we would use to grant approval.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you, Dr. Fraser. Anybody have any other comments or questions?
Christine, this is Mike. Do we also list the courses that can be taken at these universities and colleges, or
So the way that
application?
the way that we define that is courses have to lead either to a degree or to a certification. So unless the program is going to afford you a degree or a new certification, it is not permissible.
And that's a change with this most recent contract.
Yes.
Look, Robert, the only thing I'll add or I'll ask is you could get a master's in, I don't know, ceramics, and you're a math teacher. Do we allow that as well?
No, the collective bargaining agreement does have language that states that it has to be related to your current teaching assignment or relative to an advancement. So for example, I'm currently a special education teacher. I'd like to become a supervisor of special education. So the contract language that we achieved in this bargaining is very good.
Okay, fair, I'm good.
Glad you asked, Mike. Yeah, there was a lot of
I want most of the public to hear. That's all.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think we made it clear that now, since you raised the question, that it was a major subject of discussion in the collective bargaining process. And the Education Association was very cooperative and collegial about addressing that issue.
Sorry, just one quick question. With this approved institutions of higher learning, how often would that be reviewed? Would it just be at the conclusion of the CBA, or is it an ongoing review?
We agreed with the association that we would review as needed. So for example, if an employee was to come and say, would you please consider this university that's not on the list, then we would convene to come to a decision.
Good, thank you.
Great. Okay, then we'll move forward with our yes. Was there a further comment?
Maybe cough.
All right, it was a cough. 333 will go forward to the full board with our recommendation for changes as made here. Next, 334 sick leave.
Sick leave policy looks very good. Sick leave is governed by school code, by collective bargaining agreement, by individual contracts. So this is a very straightforward policy. The only change that I made to it is at the bottom. You'll see a sentence that says a record shall be made of the unused sick leave days accumulated, which shall be reported to the employee. I just changed that word to available. And the reason why I made that change is because you can view your available sick time through our electronic portals. So rather than reporting it out, the employee would access that on his or her.
Makes sense.
Self labor, that's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And it's convenient to employees.
I mean, that's perfect all the way around.
Yeah.
The way the world goes.
All right. 334 as amended will be forwarded to the full board with our recommendations for adoption. 335 family and medical leaves.
There is only one minor change in the body, which is that the district form would come to the Human Resources Office. And there are also administrative regulations that go along with this policy, so I've given them the map for us to take a look at tonight. And the purpose of the AR is truly to help employees as they navigate through FMLA, to explain how that works, what is covered, what family members are covered, how much time you're afforded. There's also language that speaks to intermittent leave, which can be challenging. The language there talks about how it has to not pose an undue hardship to the district. It is a good regulation that we can refer employees to when they would like to see more information. We have internal documents that we put together. This is nice to have available along with the policy.
So the specifics in this administrative regulation come from federal law?
From federal law.
Christina, I'll just say, I noticing a theme here where, we crossed out superintendent and put the office of human resources. Good job, that's where it's supposed to be. I'm glad to see it cleaned up, even though it seems minor to you.
The superintendent second that.
Absolutely.
They really should flow, a lot of it should flow through, glad. Robert, if it ends up on your desk, it ends up on your desk because it's a problem, but these are straightforward, it should never make it that far, I don't think. So,
Yep, agree completely.
Is FMLA been a problem for the district very often, or not?
No, I think with every organization, the intermittent leave can be challenging. It's also very helpful to employees. It's challenging in our setting because the large majority of our employees work with children. So it can pose a disruption to services. So it's something that we'd like to afford when we can, but there are times when we just cannot.
But we have the prerogative of denying it if it's disruptive.
As long as we can show that it's disruptive and posing a hardship. We try not to go down that road. And we don't have any issue with FMLA abuse or overuse, largely for serious illnesses or maternity leaves.
You have sick bank also.
We do have sick bank also.
Is that where people can share sick leave time?
Yes.
It's a great thing.
And it's not overutilized. It's truly reserved for those great extenuating circumstances.
Okay, any further comment or questions? If not, we will move forward as amended with our recommendation, 334 sick leave. Next is 336, personal necessity leave.
Had no changes.
Anyone?
give us just a brief overview of what this is.
Sure. Employees are afforded under the collective bargaining agreements, both professionals and support staff receive 3 personal days. Administrators receive 3 personal days as well. And that's about it. They're for use on things that are not illness related, hot water heater breaks, taking a trip to see a relative.
Things that in any other profession would just use vacation for.
Well, 10-month break.
Vacation, that's what they do.
Yeah, 10-month employees don't receive vacation days, so these 3 days are for non-illness related absences.
Well,
And-
Really fast, I just want to do that.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's really just 3 more days. Yeah.
Right.
All right. We'll move forward then.
But
Yeah, life. To deal with life. 336 will move forward then to the full board with our recommendations. And the 337 is vacation.
The vacation looks good as well. I did strike out the last sentence because our support staff 12-month employees do not have to use the vacation within the 12-month period. The way that the contract is written, they do have to use whatever time is earned within 12 months, but they can roll a certain amount over. So it's hard to explain, but it doesn't all have to be used in 12 months.
That's difficult.
And also with our Act 93 group, they don't have to use it all 12 months either. And we wouldn't want them to because of how many days are worded.
Yeah. Um, all vacation schedules are subject to final approval by the superintendent.
Yeah, and, or designate, so for instance, Barry Desco and Sanko.
Right.
Those are two principals, so that's where that layer of approval resides. Dr. Lambert oversees his special services department, including the special education supervisor.
Sure.
And that's where, that approval resides, and then I approve, personally approve all cabinet member requests.
That makes sense.
Right.
Would it make sense to put at the end of that sentence, or designees?
The only hesitation I would
Okay.
have with that is that in the CRESPA agreement, there is language that if the supervisor denies the vacation day, it is automatically, to the superintendent for his review.
Got it.
Correct. Well, if it works, we can leave it, or you could just write that in there somewhere. You know, approved by the superintendent is designee subject to contract.
And then,
Just to sort of be consistent.
Keep it clean, yeah. I don't want to be thrown to the superintendent if he doesn't need.
Well, I appreciate that. Really, as a tribute to both our overall staff as well as those staff members who are approving these requests. You know, I'm 3.5 years into this point, and I have yet to have one that feels comfortable. So I think that speaks well for the organization.
It does.
added that, so
All
I
right.
changed it to read.
If you could run it by the solicitor, or you don't have to provide it now, if you know.
Yeah, I did just pop it in.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all right, great.
All right, then we'll move forward. 337, vacation to the full board for its consideration with a recommendation for amending as on here. Sabbatical leave, 338.
Sabbatical leaves are also governed by school code, so much of what you see here, the language is not something that we can alter or play with. The entitlements are the entitlements by law, so the policy remains largely unchanged. I did add a sentence under commitment of employee that if you fail to submit the required documentation, you may forfeit the compensation and benefits that you received. The reason for that is to safeguard the district. When a person is on this type of sabbatical would be for restoration to health. The next one that we're going to look at is for professional development. So what this means is that if you are taking a restoration to health sabbatical, there is medical certification that has to be submitted. So this protects the district should there be a sabbatical that's put forth that's not legitimate or doesn't have the right documentation.
Okay, so this one, I'm not suggesting it needs to say it in the title, but this is sabbatical leave for health restoration. Right, and then the next one is sabbatical leave for professional development. Okay. All right, so does anybody have any questions or comments on 338 sabbatical leave for health restoration? No? Then we'll move it forward to the full board. 338.1 is compensated professional leaves.
Now, in this document, you'll see that I inserted the language from our collective bargaining agreement that we were speaking about earlier. We were able to, when we bargained, have put right into the contract that the provisions regarding graduate coursework apply to sabbaticals. So this is just a reiteration of that. So the same requirements that exist for receiving salary credit exist for taking this type of sabbatical. So that's the language that you see there and what we were speaking about earlier. The other change that I made was that all of the sabbatical requests come through the HR office, so I made that change. And then we had a due date of April 1st, but we also needed a due date for sabbaticals that people would like to take in January. So I added October 15th, which is the due date that I saw for other districts for those that would begin in January. And then I also added some language to protect the district. If you go down to commitment of employee, you'll see again, employees shall be required to submit their reports on time or forfeit the earned compensation and benefits. What we find on some rare occasion is that someone has taken a professional development sabbatical, but we have not received that document back of what have you learned, how will this benefit us, let's see the grades, all of the things that substantiate this was time well spent. So I think it's very important that we make that a serious requirement when you return. And the rest is governed by school code, so it's not changed or altered.
Including that 10% limitation. I thought that was interesting, to protect the district, no more than 10%. Yeah. Okay. Good. Questions or comments, anyone? Then we'll move forward 338.1. 339, uncompensated leave.
This is one that I'm really happy to bring this one for consideration. So uncompensated leave right now can be taken for a period of 2 years. What this policy says here is that it is for 1 year. An extension can be granted in special situations. There's also another important change that I'd like to point out to you, and it's the paragraph toward the end that talks about employees not engaging in work outside of the school district when they take this type of leave. We've had a really interesting phenomenon here of employees in all classifications taking this uncompensated leave and pursuing other careers, relocating to other parts of the country, spending 2 years in this process, and holding on to a position while those in their place are working in a substitute capacity. Right now, in times of teacher shortage, where it's hard to find really great candidates, we can no longer keep our young incoming professionals in a holding pattern. It also, I think, is very frustrating to principals and department leaders. This language exists in other districts, so it's not that we're doing something that's very controversial or unheard of, but it's definitely a necessity. I have vetted this with the associations. It's been some time since we talked about it, I would say about a year, but I know on the CRESPA side they were enthusiastically endorsing this change because they felt as frustrated as we do.
Seems reasonable
I'll
to
just
me.
add on that I support this policy 100%. I'm not sure I guess 3 different school districts. I've never seen this kind of language or even heard of this kind of language. So I think it's fairly unusual, fairly atypical, and we all know that it's better to have a permanent teacher on the classroom as opposed to a substitute, even if it's a long-term substitute, and this will go towards achieving that end. So I think it's better from an adult point of view, and it's also better from a child-centered point of view.
Robert, I'll chime in maybe just a little bit on the other side, and Mr. McKee if you want. One of the nicest perks we can give a teacher though is an extended uncompensated, a year off for maternity leave if they're willing to take it. It's one of those nice little perks. I'm glad this language is in here because I said for maternity or something like that, not for trying some other career move.
Exactly.
I'm very grateful this is in here. I've heard stories of this happening. I'm glad you've taken it out. But we still leave that window open for our young teachers if they want to go beyond the family medical leave act.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I'm glad you added that, Mike. And thank you, Dr. Fraser, for your feedback too. Sounds like there's unanimity around those two changes. So
And Marcel has left the conference.
she's satisfied too. That's good. So we'll move forward on compensated leave 339 with the changes here recommended to the full board. I want to do more, but let's see. That's,
Sorry.
we've done the list. We've worked the list. Mike, Dr. Fraser, any comments or questions?
I'll just end by saying thanks to the staff, our administrators for going through these. It's not fun work, but it's necessary. And I'm glad someone's taking a careful thumb through it. And I'm glad to see that some of the changes we made in the last contract are winding their way into cleaning up some of these regulations. And lastly, I'm glad to see the superintendent taken out as the
Yeah, he can't be the grand gatekeeper and do everything else we expect out of a superintendent.
I'm reminded.
That's right, that's all we have, team approach.
Yeah. Yeah, and a continually improving team. All right, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Dr. Fraser.
Take care.
All right, this meeting's adjourned.